Hello everyone, welcome to the class of Introduction to Finance. Today we're going to start chapter 5, Time Value of Money. This is kind of a very important chapter in this course. I would say this is kind of the most important chapter. All the chapters that we studied before kind of lay a foundation for this one, and then all the other chapters after are kind of applications of this one. So it is very important. It's very important. You can also know that it is very important from the structures or the outline of this chapter. Basically, this chapter covers the following 6 topics: future value, present value, finding interest rate and number of years, annuities, rate of return, and amortization. Basically, all 6 topics are important, meaning that they will all appear in the quiz. So there is some part that is not that important. I'll tell you later, but basically all these 6 topics are important in this chapter. So for this chapter, we're going to spend 4 classes on it. So that also shows you how important it is. There are 6 learning goals in this chapter. First one is to basically understand the meaning of time value of money. So after this chapter, you should be able to explain how the time value of money works and discuss why it is such an important concept in finance. The second learning goal is to calculate the present value and future value of lump sums. This is also what we are going to probably not finish this learning goal, but at least touches the first one in today's class. The third learning goal is to identify the different types of annuities, calculate the present value and future value of both an ordinary annuity and an annuity due, and calculate the relevant annuity payments. So this is about annuities. And then the fourth one is to calculate the present value and future value of an uneven cash flow stream. This one we're not going to discuss it in our class. I tried to discuss it in the first time when I teach this course. It's complicated for nothing. It follows the same logic, but the calculation process is quite complicated, and because it's uneven cash flow stream, you have to put in all those uneven numbers, and you are very prone to make mistakes in the process. So in the end, I decide anyway, this is not about yes, this is very practical, because in reality many of the cash flows are uneven, but it doesn't really increase your knowledge after even if we cover this topic. So it's just kind of make you used to complicated calculations. So in the end, I decide we can leave this one. The logic is the same. So if you know how to calculate present value and future values of ordinary annuity and annuity due, you should be able to know how to calculate uneven cash flow stream. And you'll use this knowledge in later chapters that show how to value common stocks and corporate projects. But we don't have enough time to cover all those following up chapters, so this part is not very relevant here. The fifth learning goal is to explain the difference between nominal, periodic, and effective interest rates. An understanding of these concepts is necessary when comparing rates of returns on alternative investments. So this is the fifth learning goal. There are different types of interest rates, and you should be able to calculate all of them based on the other. And then the sixth one, the last one, is to discuss the basics of loan amortization and develop a loan amortization schedule that you might use when considering an auto loan or home mortgage loan. I find this one is the most practical one for this chapter, the most practical learning goal, because this is basically you will all need to know this one at one point of our life, because basically you probably are going to buy a house. At a certain point, you probably need to buy a car, and most likely you're going to borrow money from the bank, unless you pay it out of cash. Otherwise, you want to know how does the bank charge you? How does the bank know how much you should pay back every month or every year, right? So this one is very useful. So these are the 4 learning goals, and we'll try to cover each of them in each of the class. So today we'll try to explain to you the meaning of time value of money, and then show you how to calculate the present value and the future value of lump sums. Let's first have a look at timeline. Timeline is very, very useful in time value of money analysis. So this is an important tool used in time value analysis. This is a graphical representation used to show the timing of cash flows. Yeah. So and an example of timelines is shown below here. So you see it's just a line, but there are points, there are dots here. Each dot represents a certain point in the timeline. Yeah. So this is time 0, which means it's right now, the current time. This is 1, means in the end of period 1. This is 2, means it's in the end of period 2, and this is 3, means in the end of period 3. Each period can be a year, or a month, or a quarter, or a half year, or it can be just like a day or a week. So it can be anywhere, or it can be an hour too. It's possible, right? It's not very usually when in our everyday life we don't see interest accumulating over like an hour or every minute, but it could entirely be possible if you do some high frequency trading stuff, right? So and then because this is time 0, means that it's current time, it's right now. So this is present value. This is the value at the present time. So right now. So this is the present value, and then this is the future value. So if right now I have $100, yeah, present value equals to $100, and I invested in a security that will mature in 3 years. So the maturity is 3 years, and then each year it returns me I% interest rate. So it pays me interest rate at I%. And then how much should the future value be? Yeah, the future value means that for example, I spent $100 to buy this security. Yes, it returns I% interest rate, but it doesn't pay me every period. So you see there's no cash flow in the period 1 and period 2. The cash flow only comes in the end of period 3, so when the security is due. And then basically then you're asking how much should the company or should the security pay me in total in the end of the 3 years. So this is the meaning of future value. The tick marks occur at the end of the periods. So time 0 is today. Time 1 is at the end of the first period. It can be a year, can be a month, etc. Or the beginning of the second period. Timelines not only deal with years, other time periods can be used as well, as we discussed before. So you see this timeline, you see 4 different cash flows. And cash flows can be positive, can be negative too. Positive cash flow means that you receive money, it's cash inflow, right? So you receive payment from the company, you receive interest payments, you receive dividend, you receive any sorts of payment, right? And if it's negative cash flow, it means it's cash outflow, means that you pay out of your pocket. So it can be you spend some money to buy the security, or you deposit your money to the bank. So whichever way the money is flowing out of your pocket, so it's cash outflow. So all these cash flows, cash flow 0, cash flow 1, cash flow 2, cash flow 3, this can be negative and can be positive too. And then again, the interest rate is I%. So here are some exercises of drawing timelines. If we are in class, I'll pause here and let you draw timelines yourself. But here we don't have that. It's hard for me to see how you draw a timeline. But ideally, you can practice it yourself. So the first exercise is draw a timeline of $100 lump sum that is due in 2 years. Yeah, so this is the money is $100 lump sum, so means that it's a lump sum money. It doesn't it pays to you as a whole. It doesn't like you don't split the payments, right? So it means that there's only one cash flow because it's lump sum, and it happens in the end of the second year because it's due in 2 years, right? So if you draw a timeline, then it's going to be a 2-year timeline. So it's the current time being time 0, and then the first one is year 1, the second is in the end of year 2, and in the end of year 2 you receive a payment, $100 lump sum, right? So here you receive the cash flow in the end of second year should be $100. And the interest rate, the rate of return, you don't know, but you can write it here, I%. I know this looks very much like 1%, but it meant I%. And then the second exercise is to draw a 3-year, $100 ordinary annuity. We haven't yet discussed what is annuity yet, but basically you can understand annuity as a series of payment, and the payment is like equal amount of money happens in each period, in the end of each period. Yeah. So this is a 3-year annuity, means that this annuity lasts for 3 years. In the end of each 3 years, you receive a payment, which is $100. So that's why here you draw a 3-year timeline, and you put the tick marks 0, 1, 2, 3, and because it's annuity, so you receive the equal amount of money in the end of each year. So means $100 in the end of the first year, $100 in the end of the second year, then $100 in the end of the third year, right? And then the rate of return is I%. Then this is another exercise. It's an uneven cash flow stream. This one didn't give you details about how much money you receive in the end of each period, but you can understand. We'll try to explain this one. That is, you see tick marks 0, 1, 2, 3 means that it's a 3-year maturities. The securities has 3 years maturity, right? And in these 3 years, at time 0, so which means right now the cash flow is negative $50. What does it mean? It means that you pay $50 to buy this security. Yeah, so this is cash outflow. It flows out of you, so you have to pay out of your pocket. You pay $50 to buy this security. And what are your returns? Your returns are in the next 3 years you're going to receive payment, but it's uneven. So in the end of the first year you receive $100. In the end of the second year you receive $75. In the end of the third year you receive $50. Yeah, and the rate of return, you can calculate the average rate of return for the 3 years in total. Yeah, so, and you might be wondering what kind of security that pays you, your payment becomes less and less. If it's bond, usually it's fixed payments because it's interest rate. It's paid based on your interest rate, right? And interest rate is usually fixed, unless it's flexible interest rate. So this one, the payment becomes less and less. It could be a stock, right? Because the dividends are unpredictable. Sometimes it's a lot when the firm makes a lot of a huge profit, and it can be 0 if the firm even if the firm makes huge profit, but it decides to keep all the money and not distribute the dividend to the shareholders. And sometimes if they don't make a lot of money or even a loss, they still decide to issue the dividend, but much less. So this can be an example of dividend cash flow. Here's another example. To set up a timeline to illustrate the following situation. The situation is that you currently have $2,000 in a 3-year certificate of deposit that pays a guaranteed 4% annually. Yeah, so this is a CD, certificate of deposit. It's a deposit, right? Means that this is your money, your $2,000, and this is your initial investment. You have to deposit this money to a bank, right? And it's a 3-year deposit, means that you will receive all your payment back in the end of the 3rd year. But this CD, this deposit, not only allow you to get back all your investment in the end of the 3 years, it also pays you interest, a guaranteed 4% annually. So it means that in the end of each year, you receive 4% of the 2,000, right? And in the end of the 3rd year, you receive the last interest payment plus the principal, which is $2,000, right? So if you draw a 3-year timeline, it's going to look like this, and then you invest $2,000 in the first period, yeah. So which means it's negative $2,000 right now. This is PV, present value, and then every year you see 4% interest payment, with 4% of 2,000, that's $80, right? So in the end of the year 1, you receive $80. Year 2, you receive $80. In the end of the year 3, you receive $80 plus your $2,000 principal. So it's $2,080. And then each year your rate of return is 4%. So a timeline of the cash flow should look like this. Okay, so that was a timeline, an example of timeline. It will help you understand the calculations, the meaning of time value of money later. So here's an example. What is the future value of an initial $100 after 3 years if the interest rate I/YR means interest per year? So if the annual interest rate is 4%, if you invest $100 right now, what should be your return in 3 years? Yeah, and this one assume that there's no payment in between. Yeah, because it's not an annuity. It says it's just asking your future value of this lump sum, $100 investment right now, and after 3 years, what should it be? So there's no cash flow happening in between. So this one is trying to find the future value of a cash flow or a series of cash flows. This one is just one cash flow. But no matter whether it's a lump sum, so one cash flow, or a series of cash flows, trying to find the future value of these cash flows is called compounding. Yeah, and cash flows can be positive or negative, as we mentioned before. So cash flow T is the cash flow at time T. If it's positive, means that it's cash inflow, you receive the money. If it's negative, means it's cash outflow, you have to spend the money or invest the money. So future value can be solved by using the step-by-step financial calculator and spreadsheet methods. In our course, we'll mainly focus on the financial calculator, which you are allowed to download the free app on your phone and bring to the quiz. Spreadsheet methods is also very useful. I would say it's even more useful than the financial calculator in many cases, because nowadays we use a lot of laptops, and it's even more powerful too. But given that it's a bit complicated for you to use your laptop during quizzes, so we'll mainly focus on the financial calculator in our course. So let's have a look at this example, trying to calculate the future value of a $100 initial investment after 3 years if the interest rate is 4%. So you draw a timeline of 3 years, right? And your initial investment is $100, so you're putting $100 here. Some of you might say, if its initial investment is $100, it should be negative, right? Yes, you're right. This part should be negative. But, you know, it's during calculations you have to be very careful. This is negative. But sometimes when you write down, when you draw a timeline, you are not that how to say, not that rigorous. So you could write examples like this, but you know it's $100 right now, and I want to know its future value. So you write future value equals to question mark, and the rate of return is 4%, and there are no cash flows happening in between. So if we don't use financial calculator, if we just do it manually, intuitively, the step-by-step calculation should work like this, right? So $100 in initial investment after 1 year should be $100 times 1 plus 4%, right? 1 is represents your principal, I is the 4% represent your return. So 1 plus 4% is 1.04 times your initial investment, $100. You should receive $104 in the end of the first year. Yeah, but it doesn't pay you that $400. So that $400 will be counted as your principal for the second period. So after 2 years, your future value should be your present value in the first period times 1 plus I%, which is 4% square, means that for 2 years, right? Then your rate of return should be 1.04 times 1.04. Which is 1.0816. So after 2 years, you should get $108.16. Yeah, and if it's after 3 years, then here should be times 3, right? So no longer square. And then in the end, you should receive $112.49. So if we continue like this, after n years, the general case, the future value after n years should be equal to the present value times 1 plus n. I is the rate of return, and then here should be n. N is the number of years, right? So this is the general equation for you to calculate the future value of a lump sum. Yeah, but clearly you see the calculation can become very complicated if it exceeds 3. Even 3 is quite complicated. So if we invest our money in some like long run projects that will return you in 10 years or even 20 years, this is going to be very hard to calculate. So we're going to use financial calculators to do such calculations. Here's an example of how to calculate the future value using financial calculators. I also show you the Excel equations here, but I won't put too much emphasis on it, given that this won't appear in the quiz. Yeah. So this graph here shows you the basically the structure of like how it looks like in your financial calculator, the one you download on your phone, or if you have an old financial calculator from someone, then this should be the look of the financial calculator. Yeah. So for each financial calculator, there are very important 5 elements here. N represent the number of years, I/YR represent the rate of return, and then PV represents the present value, PMT represents the payment happening in each period. And this payment has to be equal payment. It's not uneven cash flow. It has to be equal. So it happens every period. It's not just one-time payment. If it's one time, then it's again uneven cash flow, right? Because it happens only one time and not in any other times, unless it's only 1 year, right? So this, when any figure here on top of the payment, means that this cash flow happens every period, and it's equal payment happening in every period. FV represent future value. So you see, the first 4 are called inputs. So their input are all on top of the buttons, and then the last one is output. In your financial calculator, there are no input or output buttons. So this is just easier for you to understand. You only see these 5 buttons, but you don't see these white ones. Yeah. This is just trying to differentiate to make it easier for you to understand which are the input, which are the output. Yeah, so for all calculations in this chapter that requires financial calculator, they all follow the same structure. That is, for all these 5 elements, the exercise will give you 4 of them. May not be directly. Sometimes you have to calculate it, especially for payment. Payment is something usually requires you to calculate it. You won't directly get it from the question, the exercise question. But you will be able to calculate it yourself. So the question will give you 4 numbers, randomly any 4. Sometimes it can give you future value and ask you to calculate present value. Sometimes it will give you all these 4 and ask you to calculate n, and sometimes it will give you all the others and ask you to calculate the interest rate, or any one of them is possible actually. So in this case, let's start from future value. The question has given you all the 4 numbers for the first 4 variables and ask you to calculate the future value. So this question requires 4 inputs into calculator, and we'll solve for the 5th. And have to be careful that for all our calculations, at least in the beginning when we haven't yet made it too complicated for you, make sure you set the period per year equals to 1, which means every year you have only 1 period. That is the same as saying each period is 1 year, right? So your period is 1 year, which means n represents the number of period, which is number of years, and I/y means the return of the period. So this is annual return, return over a year, right? And present value has nothing to do with the period. It's just the value right now. And then payment also is related with period. So this is the payment happening in the end of each period, right? And then future value and present value has nothing to do with how you define your period. No matter how many periods you have, no matter whether a period is a year or every 6 months or every quarter, future value and present value are not affected. It's not that they are not affected, but they are not very sensitive to the period. But of course, if let's say your present value is $100, and you decide to compounding it over annually or semi-annually, this will have an impact on your future value. Yeah, but that is if your future value is the output. Yeah, but the others are directly affected how you define your period, right? N is the number of period, right? So if it's a year and if it's a 3-year security, then N equals to 3. But if your period is every 6 months, so if the bond pays you interest every 6 months, then N will equal to 6, because it's 6. There are 6 half years, right? But that's something we'll discuss later. Right now, I don't want to make it too complicated for you. So just make sure that right now you understand each period is 1 year. So you have to set period per year equal to 1 and on the end mode, which means all your cash flow is happening in the end of the period, not in the beginning of the period. But we'll discuss this one later about how to set how to do these settings. And Excel, I will also skip it. So now let's take out your financial calculator and let's all do it together. So this is the step-by-step based on the Texas Instrument BA financial calculator. So that's the one that you can download from your App Store, the one that I've shown you before. But if you couldn't find it, if you have difficulty using it, feel free to send me an email. We can always schedule a meeting. I will show you how to do it online. Or we are going to have virtual classes next Tuesday, so there I can also show you online. I can also like meet with you and we talk online and show you how to use it. So the first thing after you open that app, after you basically turn on your financial calculator, the first thing is trying to clear in it. Just make sure there are no memories saved before. Yeah, so how to clear the memory? Usually 2 steps. First is press the CE/C, which is the button in the let me show you, or let me see. It's hard for me to show you though. That's the button in the corner, in the left corner, in the left corner, like in the bottom, in the left of the bottom of the financial calculator. So you see that button CE/C. So press it, it will clear your memory. And then also you press second. Second is the only orange button in your financial calculator. It's the first button on the second line. Yeah, the first button in the second line, the orange button. So after you press second, you'll notice that for all the buttons in the financial calculator, you see the white like the white words on top of the button, and you also see orange words above the button, right above the button, right? So when you press second, it means it's trying to execute in the order of the orange words, those orange words above the button. Yeah, so for the CE/C button, you see the orange words above the button is called CLR work, so clear work. So if you press second and then press clear work, then this will clear all your time value of money memory. So after you do this, so press CE/C and then press second clear work, you will be able to clear your memories. And then the second one is to make sure it is the standard setting. So which means you can press and clearing calculator is very, very important. It's not just, you do it not just the moment you start your financial calculator. Actually, maybe when you start it, it's not that necessary, because I assume when it's off, it clears memory automatically. But after every calculation, you have to clear your memory. Yeah, every calculation, you have to clear your memory, because otherwise the calculation, the input you put in your financial calculator will be saved for your next calculation, and it will completely distort or make you make mistakes in your calculation for the next one. So after every calculation, clear your calculator. This is very, very, very important. Yeah, so after clearing your calculator, make sure it is standard setting. How to check it? Press second, press P/Y. P/Y is the orange words on top above the button of I/Y. Yeah, so the second button of the time value of money. You should be able to see it. So press second, press P/Y. Then on your screen, you should be able to see P/Y equal to 1. If it means that period per year equals to 1. If you see P/Y equal to 1, means that this is standard setting, at least in terms of period. So it means that now each period is 1 year. And after it's shown there, press clear work to cancel, to go back, and press it again. Press it after you press clear work, you should see 1, and then after you press it again, you should see 0. So now it's back to 0. And then the second one to check is to see whether on your screen you see BGN, begin, on the screen, which means begin. The default is end mode, so which means your screen should be very clear. You don't see any small words on top or in the bottom of the screen. You only see 0, right? So meaning that, but if you do see begin, you will have to switch it to the end mode if your calculation should be happening under the end mode. But I know you are confused what is begin and mode. Begin and end. This one we'll discuss it later. Right now, just make sure that your screen you don't see BGN on your screen. But we'll show you the difference between these two later, and we'll show you when should you use begin, when should you use end. Yeah, and then after everything, after you clear the calculator, after you making sure the calculator is the standard setting, now we can start the calculation. So what should we do? Always remember, press the number first and then press the button. So for our for this question, n equal to 3, so what should you do? Press 3 first and then press n. So now on your screen you should be able to see n equal to 3, right? And then after that, press 4 and then press I/y. Yeah, so that on your screen you should be able to see I/y equal to 4. Yeah, and then the third one is the present value. Present value is $100, but because it's investment, so therefore it should be negative $100. So what should you do? Press 100, then press negative. Negative is the fourth button in the bottom of the calculator. So in the last line of the calculator, the fourth button. Yeah. So and you see plus slash minus. So that's the negative sign. So press it once and then you see on your screen negative 100. After you see a negative 100 plus, press present value. And then you see present value equal to negative 100. And then after that is payment. Payment in this case it should be 0 because it's a lump sum. Therefore there's no cash flow happening between. So just press 0 and then press PMT. On your screen you should see PMT equal to 0. Yeah, so now you have put in all the 4 inputs here, right? The question is asking you what is the future value. So you should calculate the future value. What should you do? First press compute. Compute is the first button in this financial calculator. So the first button in the first line, you see CPT. CPT means compute. So press compute and then press FV. You should be able to see $112.49, depending on how many digits, how many decimal points you have on your financial calculator. But it should be rounding to $112.49. Yeah. So this is step-by-step. This is step-by-step instructions of the exercise here, based on the Texas Instrument, the free financial calculation app you can download on your phone. And the other thing that I want to emphasize is that we did it step by step, like from the first element, first variable to the last variable, we followed order, but the order is actually not very important. It doesn't matter. You can start from PMT and then do interest rate after, then do present value, then do the number of years in the end. Doesn't matter. This order doesn't matter as long as you put in all the 4 inputs. And then remember, press CPT and then press future value. Then you should be able to see the result. And the other very tricky thing is that always remember to differentiate positive and negative cash flows. So when you draw timelines, sometimes it's understandable you forget the sign of the cash flow. But during the calculations, you must remember the signs, because if you don't, you're going to get an error. Yeah. So in this case, if you don't press the negative sign, you just put in $100, what will you get for the future value? You can try it out to see whether you get that answer, but what you will get is not $112.49, you'll get negative $112.49. Yeah, what does it mean? It means that you receive $100 right now, but based on this interest rate 4%, in 4 years you have to return, you have to pay back $112.49. So this is like you borrow the money and promise the 4% return, right? And this makes sense because you have to make balance, right? So if present value is negative, on the condition, based on the assumption that payment is 0, so there's no cash flow happening in between. If I invest my money to some projects, to some securities, means that present value is negative, then in the future I will receive my return, right? So future value should be positive. I'll get back all my investment plus return. But if right now present value is positive, which means you receive some money right now, it's like you are borrowing money from the bank or other financial institutions, then in the future you have to pay back. So in the future value will be negative. Yeah, so you can't just keep receiving without paying, right? Or you can't just keep giving without receiving. So on the assumption that payment equals to 0, so for lump sums, these two always, present value and future value, always have the opposite sign. There's no exception. Yeah, but if payment is not equal to 0, then these two can have the same sign. These two can, because payment can be positive or can be negative, then these two can sometimes share the same sign. But if payment is 0, these two, present value and future value, always be the opposite sign. But you have to be careful about the negative sign, especially when the payment is not 0, because it will really change your calculations. It will give you a wrong answer. But on the other hand, if the payment is 0, you don't have to be so disturbed by the signs, because I promise you, in our questions, in our quizzes, I won't try to confuse you with the signs. I won't like ask you to calculate the future value and give you two options. One is positive, one is negative. Yeah, so as long as you get the numbers correct, the sign is not that important. But in order to get the numbers correct, sometimes you have to be very careful with the sign. If the sign is wrong, then you will get the wrong answer. Yeah. So this is the step-by-step instructions. I know this is the first time you use it, so you might still be very confused of how to use the financial calculator. Don't worry, we're going to go through it again in our virtual class next Tuesday. But I would like you to go to at least have a look at it yourself, so that it will be easier for us on next Tuesday, because we don't have in-person class. It's going to be virtual, so it's going to be hard for me to see what's shown on your screen. It's going to be hard for you to see what is showing on my screen. So it's better that you first have a look at it and try to do it yourself, and then you come back to me with questions and I can answer whatever is not clear enough. Yeah. So this is some like basic settings of the financial calculator based on the one that you can download on your phone. So that's Texas Instruments BAII instrument. So first turn on the financial calculator. Well, the one on your app, you don't need to turn it on. There's even no on button. You just need to open the app, right? And then the second one is trying to clear in the calculator. Yeah, so you can press second clear work to clear the time value of money memory, or cash flow second clear work to clear all the cash flow register. Since we're not going to do uneven cash flow calculation in our class, so you actually don't really have to do the second one, the cash flow second clear work. And then the third one is how to change the decimal display. This one is also not that important. You can decide whether you want to have the number of decimal places being 2 or 4, but in our calculations, in our classes, in our quizzes, I won't try to give you two very similar numbers, except for the rounding. Yeah, so the decimal points in other words, won't make a difference. The options I give you in the quizzes are going to be very different, so you won't. The decimal points won't make any difference there. But if you want to change the decimal display, then here's how to do it. So for example, if you want to change the number of decimal points places from 2 to 4, then press second format 4, enter, second set, second quit. Yeah. So this is how to do it, but it's not that important. And then the fourth one is to set period per year equal to 1. Yeah, so first is first to check the payments per year setting. You press second P/Y. So you see whether it equals to 1 or it equals to some other numbers. And if it's not equal to 1, then you should change the setting to 1 payment per year. That means you press second P/Y, then press 1, then press enter. And then to confirm the setting, press second, press P/Y again. And then you see whether it equals to 1 or some other numbers. The last one is set the end mode. The difference between end mode and begin mode is whether the cash flow happens in the beginning of the period or in the end of the period. You might think that most of the cash flows should be happening in the end of the period, which is actually true for most of the investment projects. You invest and then you receive your returns in the end of the period, right? But it's not true for many of the payment projects. For example, rent, you have to pay always in the beginning of the period. Your insurance, your tuition, everything kind of happen in the beginning of the period. So for those ones, you have to use begin mode. But for investment projects, usually it's the end mode. But to toggle between the begin and end mode, you just need to press second, begin, second, set, and then clear, work. So it should be BGN. In some other financial calculators, it could be BEG, but in our Texas instrument, it should be BGN, I think. It will appear in the display if the calculator is in begin mode, and it disappears from the display if it is in end mode. So that's the way for you to check whether your financial calculator is under the begin or the end mode. This is another instructions for the other type of financial calculator called HP. But that one, there is no free online app unless you have a physical one yourself. But I think most of you don't really have the using the physical financial calculator, so I'll skip this slide. But if you're interested or you happen to have one, you can have a look at it yourself. It's actually very similar to the Texas instrument, except that they don't use the second key, but they do have orange key that is more or less the same function. So I'll skip this slide. And then this one is an explanation of the financial calculator. So basically, as I said before, in this chapter, all the calculations are going to be following the same structure. Among all these 5 variables, the question will give you 4. May not be directly, sometimes it's indirect, but you have 4 inputs, and then the question will ask you to calculate the last one, the unknown.